If you've been scratching your head wondering whether or not the 2023 Porsche Macan or the 2023 Porsche Cayenne is for you, this is your video, because in today's video I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about these cars, from practicality, tech features. I'm going to drive them, share my thoughts on how they drive with you, and then at the end of the video I'm going to sum up the pros and cons between the cars, hopefully helping you with your purchase decision. But before we get into the video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification, because as you see below, I do a lot of cool stuff on the channel and you're not going to want to miss out. With that said, let's get into the video. For 2023, there are 4 trim levels available for the Macan. Today, we have the base trim that starts at $57,500. It features a 261 horsepower, 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that puts out 295 foot-pounds of torque, mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. It'll do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds and has a top speed of 144 miles per hour. You can expect to get 19 miles per gallon in the city and 25 on the highway, and it has about 17 cubic feet of cargo storage. The Cayenne has 9 different trim levels available. Today's tester is the Platinum trim, which adds a few visual elements to the base trim, which starts at $80,400. However, the base Cayenne non-Platinum trim starts at $72,200. It features a 335 horsepower turbocharged 3-liter V6 with 332 foot-pounds of torque, mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. It'll do 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds with a top speed of 152 miles an hour, and you should expect 19 miles per gallon in the city and 23 on the highway, and it has about 27.2 cubic feet of cargo storage in the rear. Getting into the Cayenne, right away I'd like to say that I prefer this interior over the Macan. It's just more modern feeling. I think it's a cleaner look, and the materials are higher quality, like say right down to, you know, the leather on the steering wheel. You got these nice aluminum paddle shifters. The shift knob feels, you know, more modern, more updated rather than the old school shifter. I mean, even like the door handles are aluminum, which is nice. And as far as the driver's gauge cluster goes, I really like that you have the two digital screens off to the side of the traditional tack. It just looks more updated than the Macan overall. Now, the nice thing is there isn't that much customization, but you can display different things. You can display vehicle information as well as your map off to the side here. You could display it satellite or just a normal map, zoom in and out and whatnot. And off to the left here, you could just scroll through various other vehicle information. Nothing too exciting there. But one thing that has been updated for this year is the infotainment system. Now, the screen is the same, but one thing that is different is the software. You can see they've updated it to a completely different look, and I do like it a lot. You do have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto capability, which is nice in this car. And, you know, for the navigation, you do get the Google Maps, but they have been doing this for a few years. You get the Google Maps satellite view, which is nice. I think the best thing about it is it's very clear and easy to read here. It's, you know, not too complicated to get to what you're trying to do. Like, say for instance, you could control the HVAC through the screen, or you could control it via the buttons down here, which is nice. I mean, for the things like temperature, you could just nudge it a few times, and instead of having to push down some haptic feedback button, I like that they kept actual buttons here. Just makes it easier to use. And one thing I will say about this, you know, lower control panel here is I would recommend getting paint protection film installed right away, because unfortunately with these gloss black, piano black plastics, they get micro scratches really quickly, and you know, they show dirt, you know, like fingerprints very quickly as well. So just one thing to keep in mind there. However, in a separate video, I'm going to go through the functions of the infotainment system in depth. There's just simply not enough time in this video to go through all that. Just know that in the Cayenne, you're getting the updated software, whereas in the Macan, you're getting the last generation of this software, which really, you're not losing much functionality. It's primarily just a different look. But I really do like, one thing that I really do like is how Porsche hasn't strayed away from the traditional car interior design. I like that the infotainment system is flush into the dash and isn't like, you know, Mercedes, what they're doing with all these protruding screens that stick up. It just looks so much cleaner. I really, really do like the interior overall. Getting into the Macan, it's a very different space. I really do like the layout. It's similar to the Cayenne in the fact that you have the infotainment system integrated into the dash, which looks very, very nice. You have the same haptic feedback control panel down here, which looks good. Really where the main difference is with the driver's gauge cluster. You can see here you have an analog speedometer, analog tachometer, and a little screen off to the right here. I just think that the Cayenne's update there just looks so much nicer with the two screens off to the sides. Looks more like the 911, but you still have similar functionality here. You don't lose much. It's just a smaller screen. Moving on to the infotainment system, this is running the older software, as I mentioned, while I was in the Cayenne. It still looks very nice. I wouldn't really necessarily have this as something that would deter me. You know, it's not really that big of a deal in my opinion, but it might be to you. You still have the Google Maps satellite navigation, which is nice. You know, it's just a very basic system here. You have your apps, everything's nice and big, easy to read, which I like. And down here, you do have your HVAC controls, just like you do in the Cayenne. Almost identical layout, so there's not much to cover there. Predictably so, the back seat of the Macan is where the downside is. It is a smaller car overall, and with my seat set like I had it when I was sitting up front driving, I have to put my knees to the side to really be comfortable, meaning you're not going to fit 3 full-grown adults in the rear seat. And headroom is kind of limited. When I put my head up, it touches the headliner. So if you're going to be taking around kids, I don't see that as being too big of a deal. But if you carry around full-grown adults on a regular basis, probably the Cayenne's the better choice. The back seat of the Cayenne is much better. I have the seat just like I had it when I was driving it earlier, and I have plenty of leg room. Headroom isn't an issue, and I could easily see fitting 3 full-size adults back here if you needed to. Getting into the Cayenne, this really is a nice place to be in. It's wider, it's more spread out than the Macan is, and to me that's an important thing. I like having a bigger interior, so if you're somebody who likes a bigger interior too, you're definitely a Cayenne person. However, one of the first things that sticks out to me is how easy it is to see out of this car. I mean, the way the windshield is raked, how low the window sills are, you have these little quarter windows. I really do feel like I can see everything out of this car. And it just adds to a level of confidence that you don't really have in every car, because there's a lot of blind spots in modern cars because they make you rely on all the tech features that, you know, like blind spot assist and all that stuff. This has it, but I would much rather prefer being able to look over my shoulder and actually be able to see what's going on around me. The next thing that really sticks out to me is the noise isolation. This is a very, very, very quiet car, and that's overlooked a lot, but it is quieter in here than it is in the Macan. So that's just, you know, something that I noticed. One of the things I really like about this is, even though it's a bigger SUV, going around corners, you don't really have any excessive body roll. I mean, it's just really a pleasure to drive. Going over bumps on the road, the suspension is soft, but not too soft, so you still have a feeling of what's going on underneath you, but you're still well isolated from the road if that's what you prefer. Now, one area, if you're looking at it from a performance standpoint, at least with the base Cayenne, is this does not have a dual clutch transmission. So if you're somebody that likes to have a little bit of fun when they drive, you shift it over into manual mode and you shift. Now, the shifts aren't horridly slow by any means, but compared to the Macan, you do notice the difference because the Macan has a dual clutch transmission. So like, say if you downshift, there's the shift. So it's a little bit of a delay. For some of you, that might be important. For most of you, I'm probably just speaking gibberish. But, you know, with that said, we're on a bit of a windy road right now, so let's just enjoy it a little bit. Put it in sport mode and have some fun. because that's what a Porsche is all about. I think overall we've discussed enough about the Cayenne. Let's bump over to the Macan and talk about some of the differences. Now we're here in the Macan, and boy, what a difference it is from the Cayenne. I mean, right away, you feel so much more of the road in this. It feels more playful. It's not necessarily quicker or faster, but with how crisp the shifts are and just the way the steering feels in the car and just generally it being smaller, it really does feel more sports car-like. Now, don't get me wrong, none of these SUVs really feel like sports cars, but if you're looking for something that's a little bit more playful and more fun in a sense, this is the option you should choose. Like I said earlier, if you kind of go for a base Macan or a Macan S and you're not really putting that many options on it, I think that the Macan is definitely the better way to go. I think that you should go with the Cayenne if you're going to be spending money to, you know, really make the car nice, because you really do get so much more in the Cayenne. But, you know, base car to base car, comparing the two, this is definitely the more fun out of the two cars, for sure. I wouldn't necessarily say it's faster, but the handling, you know, is definitely, you feel the difference because this is a much lighter car than the Cayenne. So with that out of the way, I mean, visibility is about the same. They've set both of these cars up very similar, where you have a nice low dashboard. You're looking down onto the road. You have these nice quarter windows, making it really easy to see in it. And you know, from a comfort standpoint, it's definitely not as softly sprung as the Cayenne. You feel more of the road in this, but I feel like this car is catering to a different audience, so that's okay. One of the areas that I think I'm really missing from the Cayenne is definitely the tech. I like that the screen was a little bit bigger in the Cayenne in terms of, like, you know, the infotainment screen, and I liked having the virtual gauge clusters off to the sides of the tachometer. I think that really made a difference in making the car feel a little bit more updated, and going into 2023, I do think that's a change that Porsche should have made, but we'll stay objective about the car. From a practicality standpoint, I think that the Cayenne is definitely the more practical car. It's higher off the ground, so if you live in areas where you experience bad weather, you just have a little bit more peace of mind knowing that, like, if you have to drive through snow, you're not going to get hung up on deep snow. And you know, if you have to carry around passengers, you have a little bit more space in the rear. The trunk is bigger. Everything about having the bigger vehicle is a plus, except for the fact that it's a little bit heavier and it may not handle as nicely as this does. But if you're looking for a sporty driving experience, this is definitely the way to go. And with the base Macan, there is still some fun to be had. You don't need the S necessarily to have a good time, although the S really does make a difference, in my opinion, having driven other trim levels of the Macan in the past. But this is strictly about the Cayenne versus the Macan. From a quality standpoint, I would say that the Macan and the Cayenne definitely match up. The use of materials is pretty much the same throughout the car. You have the aluminum door pulls, you know, the rubberized dashboard, which pretty much looks the same for the most part, and everything's built really nicely. One area that I do notice a difference is in sound isolation. You definitely hear more of the road in this car, whereas the Cayenne was much quieter. Now let's talk about driving dynamics and, you know, what the differences are. So from a dynamic standpoint, if you hit the manual button on the steering wheel, you go over into manual mode. And this car does have a dual clutch transmission, which the Cayenne doesn't. And for those of you who want to kind of push this car around corners and have a little bit of fun here and there, it makes a huge difference. The difference with the dual clutch transmission is the shifts are more instantaneous and you could skip gears. So say if I'm in fourth gear and I double tap down into second gear, it's already there. There's no wait time. And if you're somebody who likes cracks and pops and little burbles on the overrun, when you downshift, you do get a few of those. The next thing we're gonna do is, just like in the Cayenne, we're gonna go to a POV view of drive and show you guys a little bit of what it's like to be behind the wheel in this car. All right, guys, hope you enjoy the POV drive. Once again, we talked about the shifts in the Cayenne. Take a look at the tachometer in this. Downshift. Lightning fast shifts. Honestly, Porsche makes some of the best transmissions in the business. I think it's just such a shame that the Cayenne does not have a dual clutch transmission, because it really does make the difference. Now in this car, it's not necessarily faster than the Cayenne, but because of that quick shift and a little bit of a feeling of change in momentum in the body. So like when you hit the gas, the hood raises, the hood will raise up a little bit, as you go, as it changes direction. You feel all that, and it adds to the experience. It definitely makes for a more visceral experience. But I'm going to shut up and let you guys enjoy this. Very minimal to little, there's almost no body roll, and for an SUV it really does give you a sense of confidence as you go around the corners. It does handle very well, and as you go up in the Macan trim level, you do get the active suspension, the PASM suspension, and it really does make a hell of a difference. The Cayenne simply is the better car in all aspects, unless you're somebody who likes to have fun driving. I mean, like the Cayenne, you could still hustle around corners. It's still fun to drive. It's a little bit more isolated from the road, which I like. You get the active suspension. The Macan definitely feels like a last generation product, where the Cayenne definitely feels like a next generation Porsche product. That's another thing that would factor into my choice personally. But, in all other aspects, the Cayenne definitely, beats out the Macan in space, and you will spend very similar money on a Macan as you would a base Cayenne if you really spec it out at all, or you go for a higher trim package. So with that being said, if you're going to just stick to base cars and it's about the money, then the Macan is definitely the way to go, because it starts off at a lower price. However, if you're looking to spend between $70,000 and $80,000 and you're maybe thinking about putting a few options on a Macan versus getting just a base Cayenne, I would definitely recommend just going for the base Cayenne. I just think you're getting more for your money overall, and it's just a more versatile vehicle. Well, that's all for today's video. I hope it helped in making your purchase decision. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, turn on that bell notification so you don't miss out on next week's video. Before I go, I'd like to say a special thanks to my friends down at Porsche Fairfield for lending both of today's cars to me for the video. If you're in the area, be sure to check them out. They have a lot of stuff in inventory right now, and they're a really super friendly, helpful group of people to work with. With that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.